Hi, my love. Welcome back to another episode. I have discovered something so fascinating and so extraordinary in my own self. So in this episode, I want to share all about this. So it was our first Kalari performance on last week on Wednesday. It was on Guru Purnima, the full moon, which was a very auspicious day and obviously also very oriented to the gurus. And because Kalaripayattu is a guru lineage practice, it was a very important day. So on that day, we had our first performance as first year diploma students. We are now just over 6 months. Actually, today is the 200th day of the Kalari diploma. So it feels like also a beautiful milestone to be recording this. And it was our first performance. So we performed alongside the second year diploma students and we all did different things. There was a lot of things that we did together as a group. There were specific sparring that we did between the different levels, the different year levels. So we did, as first years, some of us did short stick sparring and some of us did long stick sparring. And then the second year diploma students also did clubs and spears and kataram, the daggers, and like fencing and also sword and shield. So it was a very beautiful experience. There was quite a lot of people there to watch actually. And we did a lot of training, intense training leading up to it, but in a very short window. We knew that the performance was coming and we were just doing like normal class. And then just in the week before the performance, we started having like proper performance training where we were like making sure we knew the specific sequences and where everyone would stand and making sure we all know the correct things and are doing it in the correct time with the correct technique. So it was very intense. We were doing extra training also on top of the normal amount of training that we do. And this is something normally for me that would be terrifying. And I think I've had this my whole life, you know, I've had a lot of like just nervousness around this kind of thing. I can remember being in primary school and like doing a lot of cross-country running, like as competitive as it can be. But I remember like I won rounds in our school, and then I would go to like district, which was the district. And then I also got to like the zone level of running. And I just remember like before the starting gun going off, just being like so nervous that I literally could have been sick, like so nervous, like people were watching, so nervous that I would have to perform, like even at that level. And then of course this was also a thing, like I'm pretty sure most of us have experienced this, like having to do any kind of like presentations in high school in front of the class were always just excruciating. Anything that I had to do in front of other people. And of course there's like the whole backstory behind this. Like we always have our stories of like why we are nervous and why we don't like being perceived. And I was bullied a lot in school for a really long time. So I did have this extreme fear of being perceived and fear of people looking at me or having to do things in front of people, because normally people were not very nice, you know? And so that also carried through most of my adult life, I would say, like still being quite nervous in general, or like shy, or just not very confident in myself. And I remember even moving to the UK when I was in my early 20s, and I got a job in a cafe there. And in the cafe, I was also very nervous, you know? I didn't really make that many friends with the other people in the cafe. I wasn't like that comfortable just like making banter with the customers that would come in. I was really also very shy, which is funny now considering how I am today. But yeah, even just looking back, like it was not that long ago that I felt all of these things. And actually like this time last year, in May last year, I did my yoga teacher training in Goa. And I remember also we had to do, of course, like teacher class as part of our exam. And I was extremely nervous, like extremely worried and stressed about this thing. And the whole process of it, I also felt like a lot of adrenaline, a lot of anxiety, which now looking back, actually, I wonder how much of that was just related to how much coffee I was drinking. And I expected to have the same experience with this performance. We also had a mini performance at the start of this year in February. We had only just started the diploma. I think we'd been doing it for 1 month. And we had a performance for Mahashivaratri. None of us really knew at all what we were doing. And I was also quite nervous for that one. And this one I felt nothing. I was very excited. I was very like, had a lot of anticipation, I would say, but I felt zero nervousness. And I knew that there was all of these people. We could see all of the people sitting there, like waiting for the performance. And of course, like a lot of people were very nervous. My sparring partner kept telling me like how nervous she feels, how anxious she feels, like what is she going to do? Like how is she going to perform? And it was extremely fascinating thing to observe in myself that somehow it just wasn't inside of me anymore. It was like not something that I felt. And the whole performance was so much fun. I actually just enjoyed myself so much. And of course, we made little mistakes here. Everyone made little mistakes here and there. Like it was, of course, going to happen. You know, we trained a lot. We made a lot of mistakes in rehearsals. We got better. We still made mistakes. And on the night, like there's more pressure. Little things. But it was so fun. And it was such a fascinating discovery for me to notice that feeling of fearlessness and just enjoyment. Even with the pressure, even with all of these people watching, some that I knew, a lot that I didn't know, with our guru there, like. And then I had another experience that same week, which was just this Friday just gone, where I taught my first yoga class. And it's just like a very unofficial thing. I'm not teaching properly, but I just invited like a bunch of friends because I want to offer, and also like as a way to support my own body in the Kalari practice, but a lot of yin classes, yin and yoga nidra, which I think are so extraordinary. And again, I taught this class with zero nervousness, no fear, no like apprehension, no worries about like what if I get something wrong, what if I forget one side, what if I forget the other. And it just wasn't there. And I remember just thinking like, this is so curious to me, like this thing that was a huge part of my entire being, my inner being, just doesn't seem to be there anymore. And then I thought, well, why is that? And of course it seems obvious, on reflection, because it's been more than 6 months of doing Kalari every single day. And I actually calculated how many hours of training it's been. Where did I put the piece of paper? 768.5 hours, almost 800 hours of training so far, day after day after day after day. And so I thought, how fascinating. Like we hear these stories, of course, of like people saying that doing disciplined practice over time gets you these things. And of course, like when we think about them in terms of like, I don't know what the right word for it is, but in a lot of texts, like ancient Indian texts, these kind of qualities are referred to as siddhis, which are like kind of exalted states, enlightened states. And I'm not saying that I've reached any kind of enlightened states. I'm still very much only at the start of this journey. But there are these qualities that become activated in us when we come to the threshold of that thing repeatedly, over and over and over again. And we offer ourselves up as a sacrifice almost. So it's like we surrender to the experience. And every single day, every single hour of Kalari training is like that. Like I come to the training, I come to the pit. The pit is designed in a very specific way. There are steps, big steps going down into the pit, which is 6 feet down. It's designed very intentionally to feel like the womb of a mother and to go into this process of like death and rebirth, and feeling like contained within a space that allows you to somehow surrender into that space. And I've spoken about this a lot of times on the podcast. Like it is just a mirror. That it doesn't change. The Kalari pit doesn't change. You come and you confront yourself and the pit every time you go there. And of course you confront all of your demons all of the time. You confront your pride, you confront your ego, you confront your fear constantly, you confront all of your insecurities about yourself, you confront your own weaknesses repeatedly, you confront your own capacity, your own ability, you confront the parts of you that want to just take it easy when you know actually that you could be giving more, you confront the parts of you that maybe are lazy, the parts of you that don't want to be that dedicated, the part of you that would still rather be in bed, the part of you that would rather be living in a tropical beach, like reading a book on the beach. It is just the most extraordinary mirror for all of these parts of yourself. And of course, there's not only these like demonic things that we realize about ourselves. There's also a lot of beautiful realizations of strength and courage and power and fearlessness and all of these beautiful things as well. So all of this just to provide a little bit of backstory for what I actually want to talk about today, which is this thing that happens. I've seen this, I've lived this in myself repeatedly. And this is the highest level so far that I've lived of this. And I see this in my clients a lot. I see this in my friends a lot. I see this in people that I meet a lot. But we have this thing as women, and I will say, like, especially if you're an eldest daughter, you will have this quality without a doubt. But all women have this to certain levels, depending on how sensitive they are. And depending what kind of things happen also in your upbringing, because these things deepen our natural sensitivities to things. But as women, and as empathetic, intuitive, sensitive women, which I assume you might be if you're here listening to this podcast, we become extremely, extremely good at reading everything outside of us. We are amazing, amazing. We are black belt skill level of reading the room. We can come into a space and we can feel immediately what is happening in that space, what everybody is feeling individually, what is happening collectively in the group, how to maybe influence these things to create a certain state or to, create a certain environment or to soothe. A lot of the time, our roles growing up were of soothing other people, knowing how other people feel, knowing how to soothe them, knowing what everybody else needs at any given moment, and often giving those things or trying to give those things. And we really, really are experts in that, to the point of, most of the time, complete exhaustion in our normal life. And this has been my journey, to the detriment of ever actually knowing what's going on inside of you, because we spend all of our time and all of our energy, and we have from such a young age, monitoring what's going on outside of us and around us and in our environment and in the people around us, that all of our attention is going outwards to know these things, to know them, to be safe, to feel safe, to be able to manage them, again, to be safe, and to be able to navigate our way between those things. You know what I mean? Because that just is how it seems to work. And because we've been so calibrated to that over so many years, we actually don't know how to look inside of ourselves. We don't really know how to trust our own intuition about ourselves. We can trust our intuition about other people. We can very well read that. And environments, we can very well read that. And groups, we can read those. But what about you? What about your intuitions about yourself? What about your intuitions about what are you here to do on this beautiful planet, in this beautiful body? What do you want? What does your life want? What is life asking of you? How can we listen to that? Have you ever actually listened to that? And how do you know, beyond just monitoring things outside of yourself, how you actually feel about things? How do you feel in certain situations? How do you feel around certain people? How do you feel in certain events? What do you want for your life? Genuinely. What kind of foods make you feel really alive and what ones don't? Because when we are so out of practice listening to our own bodies, being able to access our own inner world, we don't know. And so we do anything. We eat anything. We spend time with any people. We do any kind of activities. We partake of any kind of substances. And it seems like inconsequential because we are so out of tune with what is happening inside of our own self that we can't feel it. We don't know it. You know what it is for your children. You know what it is for your partner. You know what it is for your parents. You know what it is for your siblings. You know what it is for your work colleagues. You know what affects their mood. You know exactly what things are going to make them feel better, what things are going to make them feel worse. Probably what things they eat that make them feel better or worse. In what ways that they move that make them feel better or worse, that influence the ways that they behave, that then have certain outcomes. I know that you know these things. But what about for you? What about what ways you move your body that are the most nurturing and most expansive for you? Can you feel that for you inside of your own self? Do you know what your inner landscape is inside of you? And I'm saying all of these things because for almost my entire life, I had no idea, absolutely no idea. To the extent that I preferred to be just busy all of the time, completely distracted, so that I never had to fathom any of these things. And I thought that that's actually what I wanted, I thought that I loved being busy all the time. I thought all of my entire day was full of activities and socializing and work and all of these things. And I thought that's just who I was as a person. But actually, all of those things were just keeping me from ever actually having to sit with my own self and see what is actually happening inside of me. And honestly, until the last maybe 2 years of my life, 3 maybe, but 2, that was how I lived my life. I didn't know anything about my own inner world. I didn't know. And not through any fault of my own, just because that's how I have always been. That's how I grew up. That's how I navigated my life growing up. And that's how it's one of my greatest assets. Also, it's one of my greatest skills, my sensitivity. It's the cornerstone, it's the foundation of all of the work that I do with my clients, because I can feel you. You know what I mean? I know what you're living. I know exactly what you're living because I can feel it. And so it's an extraordinary, beautiful gift when used correctly, but it's not the only way to live our life. And it's certainly not to the exclusion of your own inner world. And I think the reason that this practice of Kalari has so radically changed my inner landscape is because it forces me to go inside of my own self repeatedly, day after day after day after day. And this practice, of course, like to be able to do this, to be able to train for 200 hours with not one single day off, 200 days, without a single day off, all of these hours of training, I have had to implement other things outside of this to be able to do that. I do meditate. I have specific other sadhanas that I do to be able to create focus and more discipline in myself, and focus and clarity of mind and connectedness to life, to Shakti, to divinity, to be able to, I guess, channel these forces inside of me, to be able to feel them moving inside of me, to be able to, because that's the whole point of Kalari. It is a physical practice, but it is moving energy also physically, but also subtly, in our subtle bodies. And it is, as is explained in all of these different cultures, tapping into this incredible source of life within us and being able to unblock all of the places where it's blocked, because life does inevitably end up with us constricting and blocking and bracing against things. And so we want to have practices that very intentionally open up those spaces. And of course, when you open up those spaces, there are always things there to be metabolized. There are things that have been stuck that need to be let free. And so it has been honestly the most extraordinary discovery that all of our fearlessness actually lies deep within our internal world. And it is contrary to everything that we experienced and learned growing up, because all of those things that we practiced, all of those skills that we developed at that age, all of that proficiency in reading all of the rooms around us, comes from the assumption that we will be safe as long as everything outside of us is managed appropriately. And unfortunately, that just doesn't actually exist. And it makes sense that we had these strategies as children to try and create safety for ourselves, to try and make sense of the world, to try and, get all of the things that we needed: love, attention, affection, all of those different things. But actually, as adults living in an adult world, we cannot manage everything that happens outside of us. We cannot manage the people around us. It's so annoying to be managed by other people. We don't like when people do it to us, but we're very happy to do it to other people. We always think we know better. Maybe we do know better, but you can lead the horse to water, but you can't make it drink. I always think of that saying. And we think that if we can control like the situations and the people and the group energy and all of these things, that everything will be okay. Everything will be okay. Everything will be okay. And we spend all of this energy managing all of these people and situations and things and events going on outside of us. But what does it bring us? We're tired because it costs a lot of energy. People don't actually really change unless they want to change, unless they've decided to change of their own accord. A lot of group situations just are the way they are, you know. In every single group dynamic, we also have this in the diploma. There's people that are not that committed. There's people that are very committed. There's people that completely ignore all of the rules. There's people that adhere to all of the rules. There's like, and then it's always complicated. In every single group, there's like complicated dynamics. But what are we going to do, you know? What are we going to do? And we think that if we can somehow contrive all of those things, that we are safe, that we'll be okay, and that everything will be fine. But actually that's not the case at all. Extremely unpredictable things happen in our lives all of the time. People break up with you out of the blue. I've had all of these things happen in my own life. You might have to move countries unexpectedly. That's also happened. You might lose your job. That's happening to a lot of people now, I think, because of all of these changes in AI. You might lose friendships unexpectedly. You might lose people in your life unexpectedly. At some point in our life, we are going to like lose people that are very dear to us. You might, I don't know, lose all of your money. You might win the lottery. You might suddenly have a lot of money. Or a million different unexpected things can happen, and often do happen. So if we can't create fearlessness from controlling all of these things outside of us, the only way that we can create fearlessness is by going within. And honestly, I'm speaking completely from experience. It is so difficult. So difficult. And it's almost like, if I speak about my experience in the last years, and I'm still learning so much, but it's like speaking a new language that you don't know the language. You know very well the language of everything outside of you and everybody else's emotional landscape, everybody else's needs, everybody else's desires, everybody else's landscape. How well do you know your own? How in touch are you with your own? And when you first start going inside to look inside of you, the most bamboozling thing is that there seems to be nothing. And this was my whole thing. It just feels like a void. Not even a void, just nothingness, a vacuum of nothing. Because we don't know that language. You don't know the language of your own soul. We don't know the language of our own heart. We have never had to listen to it before because it's very quiet and the needs of other people are very, very loud, very loud. So that was my own experience too. I looked inside and I just didn't find anything. And then I thought, oh my goodness, there must be something terribly wrong with me. There must be something terribly wrong with me. And then I just went through this process of trying to understand like what is wrong with me, first of all. Why is there nothing inside? Why don't I understand my own self? Am I just completely broken? How do I fix this? Like, what do I do? What books can I read? Let me read all of the books. Like, let me see what helps. But the answers aren't in any books. The answers are not out there. The answers are not in other people. The answers are all in here. Only. And I speak about this a lot on my podcasts because in a lot of episodes, because it's something that I see constantly with my clients. But the problem is often also that it is terrifying in a lot of ways to listen to our own self, because often it's asking for things that are so radically different to the life that we are living. Often it wants things that would mean that you would have to change a lot of things about your life, a lot of things about your lifestyle, a lot of things about your habits, a lot of things about the people you spend time with. And that's a difficult thing to do. You have to be extremely well resourced to make those big kind of changes in your life. And I know, because I've done this repeatedly in my own life, I support my clients through this, because it's much, much, much easier to do it with somebody alongside of you. So when we spend enough time with ourselves, this is the thing, we need to be able to spend time quietly, alone, listening, with practices that enable us to do that. And this is my whole philosophy now that I'm working with myself, that I work with my clients. But there are polarities in our body that we are just existing in a zone of beigeness, because what is actually genuinely true, and I actually read this morning again while I was reading some books related to the other practices that I do, that our body needs movement, our body needs work, and our mind needs rest. Our body needs a lot of work, actually. Our body wants and can handle a lot more. If my body can handle 5 hours of training per day, and still now I'm feeling like I have capacity for more beyond that, then it wants much more than what we currently give it. And a lot of us spend most of our time sitting down in chairs, and I've also lived that in my own life. I know exactly what that feels like. When our bodies don't get proper work, imbalances are created in the system. Our minds need rest, genuine rest. Not watching a TV show, not scrolling on your phone, not having a wine with a friend, although all of those things have their place, you know what I mean? I'm not saying don't do any of those things, but I'm saying that they don't count as rest, restorative rest. And this is why I've been so delighted to be exploring lately more yin yoga and yoga nidra. I use them myself to support my own Kalari practice, but I really want to start sharing more of these, filming classes and putting them for you guys. Let me know if that's something that you would be interested in. But those are places where our mind can actually sink away from this very constricted knot in between our eyebrows normally, in our brain. Our brain is kind of squeezed very tightly. And that needs to rest. It needs to unravel and sink into our body. And when we are not properly exerting our body and properly resting our mind, we are just existing in a state that doesn't really allow us to tap into the most extraordinary amount of power and energy levels and fearlessness that genuinely exist for all of us. Really exist for all of us. And I know that it's difficult. And I'm just remembering now, I remember times in my life back in COVID when I had unexpectedly moved back to Melbourne. There were times where I was so busy and I was trying to do fit-in practices. I was running a lot, and I was walking a lot, and I was experimenting with different things. And the only time that I would have sometimes, I would do a meditation in the morning, and then I would drive to work, and then I would do some EFT tapping in my car quickly before I went into work. And I would sometimes do things on my lunch break. And then there's of course the whole other side of the coin, which is when are all of these things just too much optimized and too much productivity, kind of thing. But just to say, I understand what it's like to not have that much time and to feel overwhelmed by how am I supposed to do these practices to discover these things about myself. And I'm not denying that it's difficult. It is difficult. It's really difficult. That's why most people don't do it, That's why most people never access this level of power within them, this level of aliveness, this level of vibrancy, this level of fearlessness. And it's only 6 months into the diploma, I'm really so excited to see what other things come from this, if things keep progressing like this. So this is just really an invitation to explore what fearlessness means for you, to actually genuinely ask yourself, When was the last time you looked inside of yourself, listened inside of yourself, and shut out all of that noise of the outside world that you're always listening to, that you're always accommodating to, that you're always so in tune to? That noise has gotten you so far, you know? You're very good at that. But all of your next levels, all of your next evolution, all of your fearlessness and all of the things that come from your fearlessness are inside of you. And if you want to be able to explore those things, you need to learn to go inside and see what's in there and discover how to rest your mind, how to work your body, and see what happens once you unlock those like truly, truly, truly enormous reservoirs of energy inside of you. This is the work that I do with all of my clients. So let me know if you need support with these things. I work one-on-one with people for over a 3-month period, normally longer actually, because people end up having we unlock like extremely big visions along the way. And then sometimes these visions are longer term. And sometimes they're so extraordinary and so exciting that the only thing that makes sense is to keep working towards them and keep building this extraordinary fearlessness, because ultimately that's what it is. Ultimately, we are all a little bit scared. We're all a little bit nervous. We're all a little bit waiting for permission, even though we rationally know that we don't need it. So if this is something that you want support with, please feel free to reach out to me on Instagram. You can fill in the link in my bio, the form there. Sending you all so much love.